I'm Jan Rose, and this is the Taylor Rose Ranch in Burnett County.
Ron Gill, professor and extension livestock specialist. One thing always interested in these ranches that have a long history, and I know you said you just acquired the status of a 100-year recognition within the industry. Just always intrigued by the history of these ranches and how they've come to be and how they've been able to stay in the family as long as they have. And could just kind of take us through that process of how your family got to this area and how they wound up keeping it or not keeping it over time and put it back together, whatever the story of Taylor Rose Ranch might be.
All right. Thank you, and I appreciate you being here. This ranch, this piece of property that we're on, has been in my family since 1886. My great-great-grandfather came to Burnett County with his brother. His name was William Washington Taylor, and his brother was Sam Houston Taylor. Their father had fought in the Battle of San Jacinto and had acquired land in Montgomery County, present-day Conroe, and he was a rancher and farmer after the Texas Revolution. Had a family full of boys, not enough land, so two of them struck out and came to Burnett County. They were ranchers, farmers, bankers, and acquired and sold land. So this particular ranch was purchased in 1886 and was given to my great-grandparents when they married in 1900. He ranched it before that, so it's been in our family continuously since then. We were able to grow up, even though I didn't grow up on this land. My father did, and so we always came back here to help work cattle and help my grandparents out. And luckily, I've been able to hold on to a piece of it, and this is where my family wants to gather. Even though they were raised in Abilene, Texas, when they come home here. They like to hunt and fish and
What made you want to come back and take ownership or management of the ranch?
Well, the ranch had been divided 3 generations ago. This particular ranch was divided 7 ways. My husband and I were able to inherit my dad's portion, but then also put together another few pieces from relatives that were selling. He was raised on a farm and ranch. I was raised on a farm, and this is home. We've been married 40 years, but we always knew we would end up here, or we hoped we would. We hoped we'd be able to hold it together. My parents always wanted to come back, and my dad died young, and so he wasn't able to. But it's always been something we wanted to do.
Your life journey hadn't always been right here, though.
It hasn't.
Why don't you tell a little bit about your
background?
Your story and your
Okay.
background.
Okay. I went to Texas Tech and graduated with a degree in nursing. So my career has always been as a nurse. I was a hospital administrator and a nursing instructor. Lived in Abilene, raised our family. And when my daughter went to college, I joined the Army. I was 48 years old, and our country was at war, desperate for people that had healthcare experience, and so they waived the age limit for doctors and nurses, and I joined the Army as a reservist. Was branch transferred into civil affairs and spent a lot of time deployed over the last 13 years into countries, and worked on healthcare projects, but having a agriculture background, I also worked on agriculture projects around the world.
Where all were you deployed at?
Well, Afghanistan and Iraq initially. In the last few years, I worked for Central Command and traveled 20 different countries. So Middle East and all the stands, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan.
You mentioned earlier in the conversation that your agricultural background kind of
Kicked in.
changed the little direction you, even in the civil affairs.
It did. It did. So my main job was to work on health care, for example, in Iraq, to help the Iraqis reestablish their health care system. But our team didn't have an agricultural specialist, so I was dual-hatted, agriculture and health care. And I think I mentioned I don't know a thing about dates, but I could learn it on the internet. But we helped the Iraqis spray their dates and work with their livestock and get alternative feeds for their livestock.
It's interesting. There's probably a lot of people don't even know what a civil affairs battalion or
Right.
unit. Why don't you just briefly kind of tell what
Okay.
the purpose of that is?
So when we were in Afghanistan, of course, civil affairs goes back to the Vietnam War days, but it is to rebuild the infrastructure of the country that we're in. And certainly in Iraq, we realized real quickly that we weren't going to be able to stay and occupy and run their country, nor did we ever intend to. But we need to get them back on their feet. So civil affairs is mostly made up of reservists and National Guard soldiers that bring skills to the military. So I brought my nursing and healthcare skills. Agriculturalists brought their agriculture backgrounds. Engineers rebuilt bridges and roads. And so we worked as a team to help the Iraqi people, the Afghani people, reestablish their countries.
That's an area that we've done some work with Extension, as I mentioned earlier, and it's always been a fascinating area that I didn't know existed either.
Mm-hmm.
And to meet somebody that's also been there and back from that is
Exactly.
kind of fun.
It is. And the fact that you did that is, I mean, we went over there and all of a sudden we needed skills from people back home. I mean, we had to reach out to the experts back home to be able to be your eyes and ears and voice over there. So I appreciate what you've done.
Well, and you know, that as you transitioned out of the military or
Right.
reserves, and now you've decided to make this
This home.
home and livelihood or
Right.
passion.
Right.
Well, just kind of explain that process you went through.
My last 3 years in the military, I was at Fort Hood, which is about 30 miles from here. And so I would get my work done early, and I would be out here in the afternoons, getting our home established and getting our herd established. My husband still works, and so it was left to me to get everything going here. We started out with just a handful of cows, and we've built our herd, and we've introduced some genetics into our herd that are worth keeping. We love working with the cattle. I especially had a learning curve, and I spent time at Texas A&M at the short course, talking to people, reading everything I could. Even though I came from a family of ranchers, my job was really mainly just to help out on the weekends. I didn't really live here. I didn't have cattle my own growing up, so I had a lot to learn.
Well, talking about the past history of the ranch, and was it a multi-species cattle and sheep and goats, as a lot of this country was?
It was. My grandfather was the last in my family. My dad, like I said, didn't ever make it here. But my grandfather lived to he was 97 when he died, so I spent a lot of time with him at his ranch across the road. But he ran sheep, goats, and cattle. And as a kid, I didn't understand the importance of that for the land, especially this land here that grows an awful lot of cedar, mesquite, and cactus if you don't have correct stocking rates and the correct species to graze. So, you know, I look back at his land, it was pristine compared to today's standards. And it was by nature. I mean, he didn't have skid steers and bulldozers. He did it with stocking rates of those three species. And he knew how to do things because that's the way his dad did it, and he improved it. My dad went off to A&M, I know, and he decided that we needed to introduce Brahma to the herd line here. And I can still remember my dad and my grandfather arguing about whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. But anyway, they got introduced, and so my grandfather was actually known for his cattle and his practices long before it became popular to gentle your herd, not tame your herd, but gentle your herd and work your cattle and make sure that you were in them.
One thing I've discovered over the years, the people that had multiple species like that were normally better stockmen.
Right.
Small ruminant animal requires you to be a better stockman.
It does.
Cows perhaps do.
It
So
does.
it's kind of interesting. A lot of good stockmen come out of this area in West Texas where the sheep were pretty prominent. You know, you mentioned your grandfather's place was pretty pristine.
Mm-hmm.
What was this like? How was this piece of property
So this is called the home place. It's actually the oldest place of the ranches around here in our family, and or continuously ranching places. And so 3 generations back, it was divided into sevenths. When the great-grandparents died, the heirs were 7 siblings, and so the land was divided into 7 tracts. One uncle stayed back and ranched all of it, but he didn't own it. So the care of the land over time, especially when he got to be older, was it wasn't his, so he didn't spend the extra time and effort and money to keep his place up. There was a period of time that the land was leased, and certainly the people that leased it didn't take care of it. They overstocked, overgrazed, more cattle than really what this place should have had during that time. And they were only running cattle, no sheep and goats. So it became overgrown. Cedar, mesquite, cactus, just very little. There was a lot of bald cedar, caliche hills with no grass at all on them. So we have spent the last 10 years rehabbing our land. We've got years to go, but we've participated in the EQIP program and cleared a lot of land here.
I know you talked about a lot of different techniques you've used to remove brush and you know, some of them you clipped off and some you've mulched up and some of them you've dug up.
Right.
Kind of why did you decide to use those different techniques?
Well, we first started with a backhoe and grubbed up, and that was mainly to clear out a place where we could restore this house. I mean, it was covered, but the downside is it leaves big divots in the ground, and you got to go back and fill those in, because every time you dig a hole here, you're going to dig up rocks. And we've got a lot of rocks here. The mulching, we tried that, and it worked good. It really produced great new growth of our oak trees to protect it with the mulch that lays on top of it. And then we sheared and piled and burned. You can cover a lot of territory with that, but again, when you burn a spot, we tend to have the sumac come back in its place. So then you've got another species that you need to control. A combination of all three, I think, have been good, but and I don't have any one preferred, but we've tried it all.
You had even mentioned that you had people come in and cut cedar.
We did.
Just to take some off.
We did. The local Cedar Yard, we had a lot of mature cedar trees, and he was thrilled to be able to harvest. And of course, he paid me every log he took off of here. You know, he paid me a percentage. And he also, while he was here, he decided he wanted the mesquite, which I sold him lots of mesquite. Every mesquite tree I could.
There's more value in some of those trees than some people, particularly in this area with
Right.
the type of juniper you have here.
Right.
You mentioned equip as well a while ago. What were some of the things that attracted you to the equip?
Well, it really allowed us to do the work and get some reimbursement for it. Of course, they don't pay for it 100%, but financially, it was a great thing. Also, their expertise. I mean, the access to the program brought along the experts in the field that could help us. In the last years, they've also in the program they've also required that you reseed and provided reimbursement for the seed. So we've reseeded in native grasses. We're strictly native grasses. We don't have any introduced grasses here. And it's amazing how much actually come back when you do get rid of the juniper, cedar, and the mesquite.
Well, you know, you've got a passion for the property.
I
long
do.
history of it, and your desire to come back here to what you call home.
Mm-hmm.
And you never can predict the future, but what would you like to happen with your place?
With my
over
place.
time?
Well, you know, we never take for granted what we've been given and what we have an opportunity to have. We've worked hard for this, just as my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents worked hard. But, and we love it. But I also, you know, I have 3 children, and they luckily love the place, and they love to come back here. And I would like to provide for them to have the opportunity to do that by doing some financial and estate planning. But if they don't, if they come back and the edge of Austin is at our property or whatever, and for them they think it's best to sell out and do something else, I support that, because I've gotten to enjoy it doesn't mean that you have to. You get to live your life. And I think I've thought about that over the years, because my father got sick when he was in his late 40s. He had cancer, and my grandfather, who never left this land, lived here his whole life and worked here and was proud to call this home, came down to MD Anderson where my dad was in the hospital, and he looked at him and he said, "This looks like a pretty good place. Are you getting good care?" And my dad said, "I am." And he said, "Is it the best care that you can get?" My dad said, "I think it is." And he said, "Well, if it's not, and you need to go any place in this world to get care, I'll sell the place." And I remember thinking, I can't believe he just said that. But now I understand, family is a lot more important than a piece of land. So I want to give my kids the opportunity. I want to set them up as best I can by doing some planning for them. But when it's theirs to do with what they want. And I mean, I really believe that. I'm not going to tie them to a promise or a thought. I mean, at one point I thought about putting a cemetery out here and being buried right out here, and then I thought they'd never sell it. My son said, well, that'll just make it more valuable, Mom. So, but they love it here. They love it here. So we'll see. We'll see.
You'd mentioned other family members coming to the ranch and how much you enjoyed that, and look forward to having that chance to educate them on what the ranch is and what the family history is. And
it is.
tell me some of the things you do with family that come to enjoy.
Well, I think I showed you the rock that I found last year. We cleared some land where the original home was here from the 1860s. And as I was carrying in the bucket of the skid steer, I was carrying this big rock up to the house to use as a stoop for my office. I saw that there was some writing on that rock, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've dug up a gravestone. I need to go put it back. But when I got it out in the sunshine and cleaned it off, I realized that etched in this stone was the word welcome. And I'm sure it stood at the edge of the yard or in the front of the house. And it really said to me what I need to do, and that's to make everybody feel welcome here. And not be stingy with what I have. I love sharing it for people to come out and enjoy and have parties and all that. But more importantly, I love to have my nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews come out and teach them how to hunt, how to clean a deer. My little great niece is 9, and she and I sat in the stand and killed a doe last year, and we skinned it and cleaned it, and she was all in it, you know. So teaching them stewardship of the land, what you can shoot, what you can't shoot, how to judge.
What kind of live wildlife, and a lot of times we think about this area has been overtaken by hunters, and that being the primary focus of a lot of these operations. But you were mentioning that some of your stewardship practices have actually improved the wildlife habitat.
It has. You know, clearing all this land and having more open spaces, our turkey population has gone way up because they love to be in a tree where they can see. Quail, we've got a lot of quail. I've got like 6 different coveys just in this pasture alone. Dove, deer, of course we've got all kinds of varmints to go with them. But our deer population has been on the increase, where a lot have decreased. We're pretty particular about what we take. We only take things that people want to put in their freezer, and we save it for family. But for example, only 8-point or better mature deer. So the kiddos need to know the difference between a young 8-point and a mature 8-point deer. So.
You don't do any wildlife counts, or you just observe?
We haven't. We can. We should. In fact, I just purchased a drone. I'm going to do some. That's mainly for our hog count that I'd like to get on top of.
we did see a few hog wallows.
Hog wallows. Yep. I feel about them like I do about cedar bushes. If I don't have one on the place, that'd be a good thing. Yeah.
Well, you talked about kind of where you see this going from a family standpoint. What do you want to do the next few decades here on the ranch?
Well, that's kind of you to say decades, but I want to produce the best quality calf I can. it's amazing. Our reproduction rates are high. We're close to 98% on our cows, just because we select and sell off the old ones and know when to fold. But I just get a kick out of producing quality calves. Most of our heifers people are wanting to buy for stock, so we're mostly just selling our steers at the auction. But
What breed of cattle have you decided works pretty good for you, and also your marketing side of it? What are you doing on that side?
we changed 3 years ago, and we have black Angus style cattle, cows, and we went back with a Hereford bull. So we have Motts and black Baldies right now. They're bringing the best at the market right now. I have looked at other species. I mean other type of cattle, and right now that's what works for us. We've got a good production going now.
When you can sell your heifers and stuff at home and don't have to,
Right.
you get the reputation for that. It's a good feeling as well.
It is, and it's nice when I take them to the auction that they now recognize our calves and know that that they're a good quality calf coming off of this ranch.
What are some of the things you do to your calves that might add value to them besides the genetics?
Well, we brand the old-fashioned way. We build a campfire and put our brands in. We're actually using brands from my husband's side of the family, his great-grandfather's brand. And so we brand, we tag, we wean our calves, we vaccinate, and so the buyers know that our calves have all those, and they do bring premium.
You talked earlier about BQA
Mm-hmm.
and how you attended some of the first classes. How do you practice that here out at your ranch?
I do. One of the first people I met when I started out here, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, was Dr. Gill. And his lecture on, he did I went to his shoot side demonstration, and at the beef QOA program, and I was impressed, and I wanted to be like him. So I came out, and I know he walks around with his hands in his pocket with his cattle while I walk around and sing to him. And they never tell me to be quiet like everybody else when I sing.
It's nice to be by yourself.
Yeah, it's nice to be by myself. But, I needed to pen 4 heifers last night, and I just walked out. I saw them out down from the house, and I just walked out and just walked them in the pens. I didn't have to gather them. I didn't have to lead them. I didn't have to push them. I just went and walked them in, shut the gate behind them. And I learned that from you. I really did. And I've taught that to my family. My boys came to work cattle a few years ago, and they were hooping and hollering, and one of them tackled a calf and sat down on her, and I said, there's a different way to do this. You don't have to do our cattle this way, And knock on wood, they are gentle. I mean, I know there's always an exception, and I do have a cattle prod, but it's still in the box. In case I ever need it, I guess I got it.
It's interesting, you go to a lot of seminars, and a lot of us do sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to figure out what we can take and adapt and utilize on our operation sometimes is one of the tougher deals. We can get too much information. And
Right.
kind of, just thinking back, because you've sorted through some of the things you've listened to, and how do you go through that process of deciding what works, what doesn't work, and what you're going to put a little effort into trying? And
What has always been curious to me is how much is enough grass or how much is enough feed? And when you really go and start analyzing your pasture, what really makes up that square foot? How much grass and how much is it growing? And what is the rainfall? Measuring the rainfall and knowing what time it comes every year and adjusting your stock to your conditions. Also, how much protein and how do you score a cow, and how do you watch her body condition? I didn't know how to do that before, and I didn't necessarily learn it at the seminar, but I knew I needed to know more about it. I needed to watch my cattle more. I needed to be on top of it and not try to catch up when the body scores started going down. Listen to the old guys around. I learn a lot from talking to my neighbors that have been in the cattle business a long time. But being more observant of my herd,
It's interesting as you go through a process of ranching, you look back and wish you'd have done something a little different here and there. You got any of those things that's popped up, or have you done everything perfectly all right?
Oh boy, no. I think listening to my instincts more. I think I told you the story about the cow that had a calf that was down, and I watched her for 2 days before I put it together that it was cold and she wasn't nursing her calf, and the calf must be down somewhere. I should have gone with my initial instinct that something was wrong. I lost that calf, and it was a hard lesson to learn, but you just need to slow down. When you're working cattle and you've got a bunch of people in on the weekend and stuff, and I need to watch and make sure that my calves aren't bleeding too much after they've been worked or whatever, and not rush off. And so those are the things that I regret, is the things when I'm in too big a hurry to slow down and spend time with my cattle.
It's interesting. There's two ladies I know that have been really good at managing cattle herds, and both of them have been nurses.
Is that right? Yeah.
Another young lady that was we spent a lot of time with, extremely good and observant. But she handled all the surgical procedures and everything else on the ranch.
That's funny.
Very interesting to see the different
Right.
dynamics based on your professional training and
Right.
background. As to what roles you might see family members playing on a ranch.
Sure.
And
Sure.
It's always been kind of an interest of mine as to what background you have and how that sets up your role on a ranch.
True.
And a lot of times we see ranches put people in places they probably shouldn't be. And so personalities and everything else come into play. And have you really thought about that at all?
I hadn't thought about that particularly. When you mentioned it, I remember going with my grandfather, and he always counted his cattle. And they could be spread out across the prairie, and I could not believe that he could count them. And I don't know if he counted them by fives or groups, but then he'd turn to me and say, "How many did you get?" And I never got the same number he got. But he knew he knew if one was missing, which one it was, out of a huge herd. And they all looked alike to me. And as he got older and he couldn't see very well in his 90s, and we drove the pastures all the time. And he would have me count the cattle for him. I do that now. And I now know which cow's missing and whether was she pregnant? Do I need to go look for her? Is she off by herself? Has she gotten across the fence or something like that? But I can tell you whether my bull was in the herd that we saw earlier or not.
Does that take long to look sometimes?
It doesn't.
Make
It
sure
doesn't. But I now know why he did it.
Yeah.
You know, what's important about knowing your cattle, knowing their personalities.
It's been interesting to see, what you've done to the ranch and the brush work you've done and the results you're getting out of it. One thing I also noticed take a lot of pride in is what you've done here at the headquarters and rehabbing
Right.
what was here in the brush. Just the story of the old barn
Right.
out there that you've rehabbed and how that came to be, and
Right.
maybe just the whole process of what you went through here on the hill.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we started looking at this place, my brother sold his part of the ranch, and so we had two choices. We could let one part go and then we could take it, and I said, you choose. So he chose the ranch across the road, which was in a lot better shape and had a house and had a barn and had a lot of things. And so we looked at this place, which was going to be ours, and man, this house was built in 1904, but nobody had lived in it in 40 years, and the windows were knocked out and the doors were off, and the cattle walked right through the middle of it, and people didn't even know there was a house still here. So the first thing we did was cleared all the brush around it, and then we tried to hire somebody to come out and work on it, and we couldn't find anybody. Almost every contractor, well, everybody but one, said, you need to just bulldoze it. There's nothing left to save there. The coons had been living in the attic, so you can imagine what it looked like. And we had rehabbed an old building in Abilene, and this fella and his two sons came out to look at it, and they said, we think we can work with that. They pulled a travel trailer out here, and they worked Monday through Thursday, and we came in on the weekends and were the cleanup crew. Just hauled off and cleaned up and shoveled out manure out of the inside of the house and everything else. And the family, all, aunts and uncles and cousins, they all started getting interested in it and giving us family furniture and pieces to put in it. So, it started out with just, well, maybe it'll be a hunting cabin, and then maybe it'll be a place we'll want to go for the weekend, and then, well, heck, let's just live there. So.
But it's also the outbuildings and stuff.
Right.
You talking about you had done some rock work at the house, and that led to some other things.
It did. We had, it's an old pier and beam house, and we had a rock skirt put around the outside. And a fella was here, a Hispanic man that was doing rock work around the house, and he walked out to a pile of rocks, literally, about 50 yards from the house, and it was an old barn that had fallen in, a rock barn. And he said, I remember this barn. He said, my dad used to shear sheep, and he sheared sheep for your grandfather in this barn. And he walked around and looked at it, and he goes, I think I can rebuild it. And I said, you're kidding. He said, no, I think I'd like to do that. So he and his son came out here. It took them a year, and they rebuilt the old dog run rock barn, and we now use it as a bunkhouse, and we built a bathhouse out by it. So our 2-room house is large enough now for all of our family with our bunkhouse, so we can sleep about 20 people.
Well, there's a lot of interesting history here, and you commenting about all the old artifacts you find in nearly every old farmstead. You find that if you just look.
Oh, we've got lots of barbed wire. We have a barbed wire collection just from this ranch, and all kinds of treasures.
You mentioned the barbed wire. You you'd also said you'd been doing a bunch of fence work on the
Right.
ranch. So
Right.
what are you trying to do with that aspect of it?
Well, we needed to go around the perimeter for sure. We've replaced fences that were 90 years old, barbed wire fences that were 90 years old. And so we did the perimeter first, and then we started cross fencing so we can rotate our cattle in pastures. And you can do a lot of ranch work, but if you're not cognizant of your water sources, we need to build a couple of tanks. We've got some good streams that are flowing from artesian wells, so we need to capture that water and take advantage, but make sure all of our pastures have good water.
Water's always been a major issue in this part of the world, or any part of Texas,
Mm-hmm.
as far as that goes. But you mentioned some really interesting things about water, all the way from the hand-dug well down by the pond where the old original house was, back to tar floating on top of the water table in another. And
Right.
so there's some unique situations there, and
Unique challenges.
I don't know if you want to tell any history on the old well down by the original
Right.
house. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
what you've done there.
The original well for the house, in the original house, was a hand-dug 20-foot well. It's rock lined down about 12 feet, and then dirt underneath that. So all the time growing up, if you went out the door here to play, they would say, "Don't fall in the well." So I had a fear of falling in that well, and it was just like lumber just over the top of it. But you could see down in it. You could see the water. And I was, and then I was afraid a cow would fall in it or a grandchild. So we built it up off the ground and put a cap on it so that it's a little bit safer. But that water table is at ground level. It's 20 foot deep. And I have an uncle that talked about when it was dry one time, they lowered him down in there to clean it out, which, who would do that to a kinfolk? I mean, who would put you down in a well like that with the rattlesnakes?
Back then, everybody.
Yeah, everybody did it.
Everybody had that child.
So he was the littlest, and they put him down there with a rope and a bucket, and he would fill up the bucket, and they would haul it out, and he stuck his shovel in the ground, and the water just started bubbling up. So he had to quickly climb the rope to get out of there. I can't imagine. I'm tough, but I'm not near that tough.
Don't want to go down the well.
No.
Well, you mentioned the water table it's not that far to water.
Correct.
What are some of your unique problems? You were talking about some of these earlier, in using well water. You find water, but is it really
It might not be the best water. We have a windmill back in one pasture that probably maybe the 40s or 50s. It was a shallow well. It was 50 feet. I put a windmill on it, and it would during a wet season it would work great. But as the water table started dropping, apparently there's a layer of tar floating in that water in that cavity down 50 feet. And as it would get lower, that tar would gum up the windmill. So they only knew they could use it certain times of the year during the wet seasons or not, certainly when we didn't have a drought. But otherwise, they were pulling it and cleaning it.
that would be a unique problem?
That's a unique problem. That's
What
a
I have
unique
not
problem.
heard
Yeah.
As far as your long-term goals here, are you getting kind of where you want to be? What is your long-term goal?
You know what? Those darn cedar bushes, they never go away. Cactus never goes away. It is a continual process. The rest of my life will be working on my brush problem. But you know, it's kind of nice to, I think I told you we did some experimentation this year with fertilizing some native grass and putting some weed killer on it. And what I discovered of that 40 acres that I did, the cattle are going to camp on those 40 acres and they're not going to graze the rest of the pasture. So, you know, it we'll have to do some electric wire fencing or something if we do that again. But I do think it was cost effective from what I can tell on that. Be fun to do that.
Yeah.
I'd like to perhaps go back with some goats and the portable pens that you can rotate and put out different places. I think would be something I'd like to try.
Well, there's getting to be some, you know, some spot grazing work like you mentioned earlier, and also the advent, you know, using some good guard dogs to kind of help protect them or pen
Right.
the goats
Right.
in those facilities. Sure, makes some sense. So that's something that might work to help control some of the understory, and they love sumac too.
Oh, good, good.
They'll strip the bark off of sumac.
My retirement years are going to be filled.
You
Won't
have
slow down.
You won't have a shortage of things to do.
Won't slow down.
From just visiting with you, I think that might be your objective.
You bet. You bet.
Not slowing down.
I mean, why? When you have this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's always interesting to us to see how the passion for land, I think, is in some people, and it's really not in others. I think you kind of mentioned that as well, and family
Right.
members, some do, some don't,
Right.
and trying to figure out how that best fits with the future is always a challenge. But your comments on what expectations are for your children or maybe even grandchildren. A lot of times
Right.
we see a generational gap or
Right.
shift there. The kids may not. They've gone off and made the grandkids, I know, come back, and you really enjoy them
Right.
being here with you. And so there may be a draw there that
Right.
you don't think about to start with sometimes.
And did my grandfather look at me? I mean, he had all grandsons. I was the only granddaughter. Did he look at me and say, "That's the one that's going to keep it together"? I doubt it. I doubt it. But I want them to do what I've gotten to do everything I wanted to do in life. I had a great career, great military career in addition to that. So I want them to do the same. I want them to try it all. But I will tell you that of all the relatives that sold out, there's not a one of them that doesn't come back and say, "Gosh, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't sold. Wish I had that today." Once it's gone, it's pretty hard to get back.
That is true. Any words of wisdom for somebody that might have the same opportunities you do?
You know, I think I have a whole new set of friends in the last 15 years from the military. And it's amazing how many want to get into the agriculture business.
Yes, it is.
And in Texas, they have an opportunity. Like, not all states are as veteran friendly. So I have a lot of friends that come out and spend time here and would like to get into some sort of agriculture business. And of course, women, there's all kinds of opportunities. You know, I'm not as strong as some people that do these things, but there's all kinds of equipment out there and labor. I told you my best friend is my feed truck. I remember my grandfather standing in the back of the pickup truck and shoveling feed out of the back with a big scoop, you know. So there's all kinds of things.
You mentioned the veteran thing, and we have some programs where we try to help veterans connect with this. Draw to the land is really therapeutic.
Absolutely.
For a lot of them as well, particularly it's been active duty. even from our standpoint, what are some things we can do to interact with the veterans to help them in that process?
You know, I truly believe that anybody that is worried about our country, worried about where we're going politically, or worried about what's going to happen is in our place in the world order, need not worry because of the people, the young people that have served our country and the things that they've seen and the places they've been. We have resources within our veterans to do the most amazing things, because I saw them do it on the military side. And you know, there's always the veteran that gets the attention in the news about going on a shooting spree or you know, murdering his wife or blaming it on PTSD. And you've got that, just like you do in any population. But I'm telling you, there are some great people out there. Great work ethic, smart, been other places, know how to work with people, know how to get along with groups, disciplined. And I think agriculture and the veteran go hand in hand. I mean, like you say, it's therapeutic, whether it's working with horses or farming land or raising cattle. I don't think people should shy away from giving a veteran an opportunity.
There's a lot about what you just described, a veteran being that they're somewhat structured. They like
Discipline.
discipline. They like interacting in a team. A lot of times we don't think about farming and ranching as a team effort, but
Right.
if we really look at its core, that's what it is. Whether it be a community or a family or whatever
Right.
it might be. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities to engage
Right.
that population. And it, you know, used to that they were able to come back into agriculture from the wars, and that's not available to as many of them. And I think it's starting to show.
Right.
And so
Right.
it's going to be interesting to see what we can
And you
do.
know, in industry, we've talked about young mothers job sharing, where you've got people that want to be home with kids, so they share a teaching job or a nursing job or whatever. So we've thought about it there, but we don't really think about that in agriculture. What would I like? I'd like somebody to walk in here and take care of my cattle while I'm gone, and do a good job of it, where I can take a trip or, you know.
Our industry's kind of prided ourselves on not being able to leave because of the livestock.
Right.
That's another reason we're not getting young people back in our industry.
Right, right. So think outside the box. If it works in this industry, why couldn't someone be valuable to be a sitter?
It's a good idea.
See the best of both worlds. You go to somebody else's place and you stay there a month and let that person take a break. Take care of sick family or do the things that you want to do because our kids are not going to be happy not traveling and not going to events and being involved in their kids' lives. Our world is wide open to opportunity. You know,
Labor.
well, certainly labor. It's hard to find someone that wants to work this hard for the pay. Eminent domain. The last 3 years, there have been 2 pipelines that wanted to come right through the middle. Not particularly this ranch, but just one over. And of course, when they start doing it, they can deviate. But my neighbors have all gotten notice and surveyed, and the both pipelines have backed off for now. You know, that would be there are some landowners that I know in the community that welcome that. They want the revenue from that. But I don't really want to give up my right to lock my gate and to know who's on my property.
Eminent domain's one that's gonna have to be addressed at some.
It
I know
is.
it made a pretty good run this year in the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
Failed in the conference committee, I think, but
Right.
it will be one that will keep resurfacing.
And you know, I've always cared about it, but not near as much as I cared this year when it was my neighbor that they wanted to come across. You know.
That's just like all of these issues. It's not a big concern of yours until it happens to you,
Right.
and so we don't unify.
We don't get behind
we don't
it.
think it's going to happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all some interesting
Right.
things.
Water, I think, is a huge issue that our state's going to address, one way or another, whether we like the way they address it or not. The population growth, enormous. So, what will ranching look like 50 years from? In this location, what will ranching look like 50 years from now? Will this be a suburb of Austin? More than likely, it will. So.
It adds value to your land, but it also adds a level of complexity and uncertainty.
Certainly. Yeah.
Well, is there any parting words of wisdom you want to share with us?
Well, you know, I think I pretty much said everything. Life is short. I mean, I guess that's what you learn when you go to combat, and there are those that come home and there are those that don't. So make a difference where you're planted. Make a difference, you know, as young people in agriculture. There's no better field. Make an impact. Live your life, but live it well.